Good afternoon, everybody. Hi, Journey. We will give so 11:58, we'll give 2 or 3 more minutes to let some more people hop on. And yeah, so I'll probably mute myself until then, but I'll be here and look forward to kicking off with you guys here shortly. All right, everyone, we can go ahead and get started. Happy Thursday. It is nice and sunny out today. Journey, thank you so much for being here with us. We greatly appreciate you being on. Yeah, Journey has like a wealth of information. He is also, side note, the social media king. So I hope you're following him on social media if you do not. But today we are going to be picking his brain just about buyers. I know our subject was CMAs. I think in this market, it's not really, we're not pulling a ton of CMAs right now, but we're going to pick his brain on working with buyers, CMAs, negotiating, and what basically how he's working his buyers right now. And then we'll leave a little bit of time at the end. If any of you have any questions, feel free to unmute and ask them anything that's on your mind. And even during these power-ups, they are laid back. If you guys have a question, you can unmute or anything during. We are here to answer anything. So, Journey, without further ado, you can unmute and let us know, how long have you been licensed?
Perfect. Yeah. And thank you for the introduction. And thank you everyone for coming in. Hopefully I'll be able to provide some sort of help and some sort to be a resource for everyone in this market that we're in. So obviously my name is Journey. I've been at Keller Williams Living the entire time that I've been licensed. So I got licensed in July of 2021. So my anniversary was like 2 or 3 weeks ago. So just over 2 years now.
And let that be, I hope it's like a motivating story for you guys. Journey like hit the ground running. I feel like from the time he was licensed, he was just always making the right decisions. He's always been busy. He has been like our little rookie of the year, if you will. So yeah, we appreciate you. And Journey, without further ado. So as we're saying, CMAs are kind of super hard to do in this market just because we were in such a fast-paced market, and it's still fast paced, but yet we want skill based as well. So in what scenario are you actually even pulling comps for your buyers or preparing a CMA before submitting an offer?
Yeah, so I would want to say that in most situations, I'm trying to run CMAs for my clients. Typically, I don't run them before going out and visiting the property. So if we go out and tour the property and my clients felt like it was something that they wanted to try and pursue, whether that be for traditional buying and selling or investing, because a lot of my business right now has been focused on investing.
Mm.
Um, so touring it first, making sure that it's something that we wanted to pursue before kind of wasting our time and looking at CMAs and the value and things like that. So once we felt like it was a property that we wanted to pursue and write an offer for, one of the first things that I try to do is just call the listing agent. So texting them and say, hey, are you able to give me a call at your earliest convenience? I have a client who's very interested in writing an offer. I think it's something that I do every single time. And I know it's had success creating that relationship with the listing agent. If I've never worked with them before, obviously me being only around for 2 years, there's a lot of agents out there. So there's a lot that I haven't worked with yet. So creating that relationship will always help, especially in a competitive market that we are in. Even on the listing end, when I have listings, just someone sending in an offer and I've never talked to them or they've never texted me, it immediately just kind of goes below some of the other offers that are there, just because I've talked to the other agents and answered questions, and I feel more comfortable with them buying the property that I'm listing because they have more information to them. So for CMAs, almost every time I'll try and look and just kind of see what the value is and make sure that the property is keeping up with what the market is asking for. And typically I tell my clients that if there are multiple offers on a property, that we have to be prepared to be competitive, even if that CMA is right at value or slightly above. Everyone else is going to be competitive just because of what the listing price is and what people are willing to do right now for properties.
Mhm. Absolutely. Let me ask you this, Journey, while you're on this conversation, what questions are you asking the listing agent? Or what questions do you like that buyers are asking you as the listing agent?
Sure. So I think the biggest questions that I always ask is like, first, how are they doing? So always trying to just start there, start away from real estate. So asking how they're doing is always the first thing. And then telling them like, congrats on the listing, because listings are very, very tough right now. So whenever someone has a listing, they probably worked pretty hard for it. Obviously, once the listing goes live, it kind of takes over. But asking them, telling them congrats on the listing, and then asking them if there is anything specific that they or the seller might need in an offer. So whether the seller needs additional time to leave, if they are living in the home, if they already have somewhere else that they are going, if they have a specific title company that they prefer to work with or that the sellers prefer to work with. That's always going to be something that we can try to do to be competitive. It's really easy. There's a lot of great title companies out there. So closing time frame, title company, and then I typically just straight up ask them where the other offers are at. If there's any additional information they can give me about the other offers, if their client has allowed them to kind of answer those kinds of questions. And if there is a deadline that has been set to make sure that we don't miss a deadline. And I've had agents tell me that we are 10,000 over asking price already. We are 20,000 over asking price already. So then I can go back to my clients and say, hey, they're already 20,000 over. I mean, if we aren't willing to go that high and possibly do other competitive things, then I don't know if this is a property that we want to pursue because we already have a lot of competition that we're going against.
Mhm. Yeah, that's awesome. And you know what was going through my mind too is I am also taking notes, and you starting with how are you doing, like the warm relationship, congratulating on the listing, and then all of the questions you're asking them, like I promise you, you are going to get more detail from them and find out more because you've called. Like you just can't do that same thing via text. You can, but it sounds like that's teeing you up for a much warmer handoff with your offer.
And I know that I like it when it happens to me on my properties as well, is I don't like to just be kind of called out of the blue. So I typically text them every single time and I'll say, hey, I have a client very interested. We want to write an offer. Are you able to give me a call whenever you're available? So that's what I always start with. And then sometimes I've had agents text me back and say, hey, not going to answer a call. Just send your questions via text. So I've had that before as well, but most of the time they'll give you a call. And I know I like that on the selling end as well, is to send me a text first and then let me try and give you a call when I'm available. So that way I'm not just trying to miss a call or listen to a voicemail, then call you back. And then, we play phone tag back and forth 2 or 3 times. So texting is usually the best way that I go first.
That's such a great point. So texting, preparing for the call, and then you're not calling out of the blue. I love that. So another question I had for you is, this is kind of changing the subject here a little bit, but a lot of clients so you've pulled the CMA and you think, okay, we can come in at X amount. I think so many buyers right now are worried that they're overpaying. How do you ensure that your client is not overpaying?
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing with looking at the CMAs and making sure that we're not overpaying is trying to go in and take a look at the criteria for that specific property. So looking at properties that are very similar and making sure that we kind of go into all the criteria that it might need. So, square footage numbers, bed bath count, however far we're going out in terms of the radius. And then if I try to look at just the pricing to see where the range might be on the price. And then I'll also look at price per square foot numbers to try to get a better idea of what the price per square foot would be, just in case there are, this specific properties maybe a little bit smaller or a little bit bigger than a lot of the other ones that are in that area. Because a lot of cities have pretty similar properties most of the time. And so if this specific property is more unique and has a lot more square footage, then just looking at the price might not be the best way to look at it, because this property is a little bit different than the rest of them. And so not overpaying, I usually try and look at that square footage number, at the comps that are supporting it, and then try to add just a little bit. I think that right now appraisers have been pretty flexible on a lot of homes with the market that we've been in. And so I usually tell my clients to anticipate somewhere between about 5 and 10% over asking price in order to be competitive on a lot of homes that are new on market.
That's great. And another thing I always used to add when I was working with buyers and they were scared about that was, listen, you have all these people in the transaction that are helping. Like, the reason we have appraisers is because the bank is going to come out and say if it's valued at that. So now, if they're cash, it's a different scenario. But if they're financing, put that on the appraiser. Like, they're not going to let you buy it if it's not valued at that. So
yeah. No, that's a perfect point. Yeah, I'm not going to be the only one that's looking at the value. There's going to be quite a few other people that are looking at values too.
Yes, for sure. Now, you touched on this a little bit, but what metrics do you consider when you're discussing offers or even in buyer consultations? So you mentioned just earlier that you're doing bed, bath. Will you look at, like, if you're looking at colonials, will you only look at colonials, or how flexible do you get on property type? What parameters are you using when you're actually like doing a CMA?
Yeah, so I try to stick as close as possible. So I think it depends on the area that we're going to be in, and what major city or what metro we're in. Like, to give an example, if we're in Maple Heights, basically 80% of the houses in Maple Heights are single family, 3-bed, 1-bath, Cape Cod bungalow styles. So it really kind of depends on where we're at, and I'll try to get as close as possible. So definitely looking at the same property type. In terms of like multifamily versus single family, we'll stay in the same property type. We'll definitely stay in the same like bedroom count. So if it's a 2-bedroom home, I think it's going to be a much lower price than a 3-bedroom. I don't think there's a ton of a difference between a 3 and a 4-bed. So if we capture a few like 4-bedroom homes in our like criteria, I think that'll be okay, as long as we didn't pass up 3-bedroom homes. So
Mhm.
usually what I would do if I'm looking at a CMA is I will go into the MLS, type in the address that we're looking at, and then we'll go to basically sold, and it typically auto populates to go 6 months back. So looking at 6 months and then starting at a quarter mile, go a half mile out. And if I get typically somewhere between like 30 and 50 results, that's usually good.
Mhm.
That usually gives you plenty of options to kind of pull from. So if we get between 30 and 50, then I'll maybe go in and open it up and see what the properties are, if they're all fairly similar. If I'm getting a big range, then I'll go in and do a square foot number. So I'll go like 2 to 300 below and 2 to 300 above my
Okay.
property type that I'm looking at, just so that way it's similar square footage. And usually that will grab properties that are similar in terms of bedroom counts as well. Especially if we're looking at a 3-bedroom colonial that is 1,300 square feet. If we put a max at 1,600, we really shouldn't be getting 5-bedroom houses. It shouldn't be pulling them just because it's not big enough.
Yes.
So those are typically the parameters that I do. And then I'll go in and look at, it's usually between 3 and 5 houses that are similar square footage, similar size, similar bed bath count, and then looking at condition. So looking at the condition that my property is in, whether that be fully updated, fully renovated, or if it needs work. So bathrooms and kitchens are going to be the big ones. So those two things, looking at them, if they have new cabinets, new countertops, and trying to compare those to the comps that I'm pulling, to make sure that the value lines up between those two.
That's great. What about, I'm curious, and I guess this depends on which area you're in, but do you pay attention to year built as much or?
Yeah, it does depend a little bit on where we're at. So a lot of the work that I have done has been like in and around Cuyahoga County.
Mhm.
So I don't have a ton of experience getting out into much higher price points, to where I think that the year built count like matters more.
Mhm.
So I usually don't do too much with year built. If it's built before like 1950, 1960, I don't think it matters, because between 1900 to 1960, they're all pretty much the same. I think once you get over that mark and you start getting into more newer build, I think it would be a lot better to try and tighten up the criteria based on new builds. Um, but for a lot of the properties that I have worked on, and are under that like 1960 year mark, I don't think that the year matters too much.
Yeah, okay. That's great. And then I'm also curious, just for those that are on the call, at what point could you define when, like, I know some people will pull like a school district as a whole. Some people will pull like a quarter mile radius or a 1 mile radius. When would you use the mile radius? When would you use school district as a whole?
Yeah. So I think yeah, kind of, everything always depends, right? So I think it will depend on what city we're in. So the best example that I can give on this would be the Cleveland Heights, East Cleveland border, because it's a very, very big difference between Cleveland Heights and East Cleveland. So if our property is right on the border of those two areas, if we go a half mile out, we might be capturing both, and
Mhm.
the property values are going to be very, very different. So if I'm right on that border between two cities that have a large discrepancy like that, then I'll go in and filter based on school district. So if we're in East Cleveland, I'm going to go in and make sure that we're looking at East Cleveland schools, and then go quarter mile, half mile out. So that way it kind of creates almost like a half circle, rather
Mhm.
than a full circle, and eliminates everything in Cleveland Heights. If we are in more rural areas, where there isn't as high of a dense population of properties, going half mile, 3/4 mile, mile out might not grab enough properties. So if we're in areas that are much more rural, then we need to maybe look at the whole school district to grab enough results. Or something that I've even done rather than just going the whole school district would be going a mile out, going at 2 miles out, and then maybe looking at 9 months instead of just 6, to try and grab properties that are closer but maybe sold a little bit longer ago.
That's a great point. Really good point. And I think sometimes it's beneficial for, I guess, more on the selling side, knowing, okay, are buyers going to be, do they just want in Twinsburg or do they want in this, certain mile radius? So yeah, I think they both make sense without a doubt. Another question I have for you back to negotiating is, how are you educating your buyer on what their buying power is? Like, are you explaining beforehand, like in addition to the CMA, are you explaining like people are waiving appraisals or, what they're not waiving appraisals, waiving inspections, doing appraisal gaps, yada, yada. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I've had a couple of clients waive an appraisal before.
That's awesome.
Depends on how much cash they have.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I typically do try to coach them, and explain to them where we are in the market. And you kind of mentioned at the top of the call, for those that don't follow my social media, I'm very active on Instagram and Facebook specifically, and I do market updates. So every Monday I do a market update and look at a different city or different neighborhood and analyze kind of where that area is in terms of average price point, average time on market, the average sale price as a percentage. So the listing price to sale price ratio, and tell my clients that it is very, very competitive for buyers. It's very difficult to get an offer accepted. So there are a lot of things that we can do to try and be competitive for those brand new homes. So if we have a pre-approval maxed at, 200, 250, I tell them that if we're looking at a $200,000 house with a $200K max budget, it might be difficult for us because that property is likely going to go over asking, if it's priced appropriately. If it's brand new on market, within 3-4 days, it's going to get that immediate competition. If it's been sitting around for 2 weeks, we might have a little bit more power to come in on that one. But I usually tell them to target a little bit below. So, 10% or so below our actual pre-approval amount, to make sure that if there is a property that we like at that 180 mark, we're willing to go over, and we're not going to push ourselves too thin to make sure that it still makes sense for us. And to go off of that as well, something that I do too, if this client comes to me first and I have my recommended lenders, I already asked this question ahead of time, but if a client comes to me and they're already pre-approved, then obviously I want a copy of their pre-approval letter, and then I reach out to that lender, and ask them how they got that number. So what they were doing for their taxes, and what they were doing to get that pre-approval, because lenders will give a pre-approval for a price, but their actual number is based on a monthly payment. And so they estimate what their taxes are and what their insurance is for that monthly payment. So if we are in, again, Cleveland Heights, where taxes are so high, say we might not be able to hit that 200 mark. But if they estimated taxes for Cleveland Heights and we find a property in Cleveland and our taxes are half, then we might be able to go over that 200 mark to get a property that we really, really like. So trying to make sure that we know exactly what our budget is in terms of a monthly payment as well, not just a price for the home.
That's awesome. I love that. I haven't heard a lot of people say that.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this. I have 2 questions in regards to your social media. What information? So one thing I love about it, so he will, like, as Journey was just saying, he'll do market updates on certain areas. So, for example, if a certain area is the list price to sale price he brought up, you can see that it's selling on average 102%. So here's the list price. It's selling on average 102% over. It's a way you can prepare your buyers ahead of time, just so you know, we're probably going to be over list price. So my question is, what information, like, do you always pull the same information for each area? Like, this is what I want to update you on. Like what area, or what information are you putting in your social media market updates? One, and two, how are you finding that information?
Yeah. So the market updates, I go on RPR. So on the main MLS Now login, before you go into Matrix, you go in and just click RPR instead. So going into RPR and then basically going to, I think it's neighborhood search. It's either neighborhood or property search, something like that. And then just searching cities or searching neighborhoods, and looking at them. So as soon as you go in, it'll pull up the market trends. So it'll give you a big breakdown on the last like 12 months, the last 24 months, and it'll tell you all of those average numbers. So the videos that I post is basically just a quick snapshot of it. It gives you the market that we're in. So seller's market to buyer's market. I don't think I've done a city yet that isn't in a seller's market. So a lot of them ranging from like, half a month to 2 months of inventory, which is obviously a seller's market. And then what I'm analyzing those on is those main four metrics. So month of inventory that we have available, list to sale price ratio, the average time on market in terms of days, and then the median sale price. So those are the four that it usually gives you right away that you can see. And so I usually try to pick three that stand out. So if I'm analyzing an area and the average sale price is like 96 to 98%, it's not really anything crazy. So I usually will try to do the other metrics because the average time on market was 6 days. So you have 6 days to go out, visit that house, make sure you like it, and write an offer for it, and all in less than a week. If the list to sale price was 106%, which I think I did last week for University Heights, that's pretty big. 6% over asking price. I think it's the most I've seen so far. So that was something that I wanted to highlight, that area, there isn't a lot of inventory there. And when there is a home that comes up, people are willing to do a lot for it.
Great. That's awesome. I love that. So you said that's RPR, like when you log into Matrix. Hope
Yep.
you
Yeah. So
are
it's all in. Yeah. So it's all in RPR. So when you just go into the MLS Now Matrix, the MLS Now front page before you go into Matrix, I think it's on the bottom row. You just go into RPR instead.
Awesome. That is so great. Okay. And then Journey, if we have anybody who has questions, feel free to unmute and ask. And my last question for you is, especially more for somebody newer, what advice would you give when it seems overwhelming? Like, I'm never going to understand everything a buyer needs to know, or am I going to know everything myself? What advice would you give to somebody who is just starting out to learn what information they need for their buyers?
Yeah. Something that I did, and I don't know if a lot of those people are on this call, but when I first got started, I've done fairly well over the first 2 years for new agents, like you kind of mentioned in the beginning. But the first 3, 4, 5, 6 months were very, very tough. And so I think that me personally, I was in a position to where I didn't have a lot of finances that I had to take care of. I didn't have a mortgage at that point. I didn't have kids. I didn't have anything I had to pay for. So I was able to really be able to dedicate a lot of time to this. It was full time when I started. So something that I did in the very beginning was I asked all of the successful agents in our office to coffee. So I asked Carly Sablotny, CJ, Rick, I asked everybody to coffee and to meet with them and see what they've done to be successful, and wanted to spend time with them and see how they have gotten to this point and grown to the success that they have had. And so that was something that I did in the very beginning. And in terms of capturing knowledge, just continuing to research, continuing to try. So the RPR and doing market updates, that was something that I really tried to do in the very, very beginning. So that way I know what that market is doing. If I answer a call from Zillow or from my sign, my phone number being on a sign somewhere, and they say, what's the market like? I know exactly what the market's like because I look at it every single week.
Mhm.
So just being able to better arm yourself for the conversations that people are going to ask you about. So knowing how competitive the market is and talking to a lot of people and being able to answer those questions before people even ask you them. And I think another thing that I did a lot in the very beginning too was open houses. So just being social, because in the very beginning, you don't have a lot of clients that you are able to talk to every single day. So reaching out to other agents in our office for open houses and asking if you can hold it open. It's hard right now because a lot of houses don't need an open house, but asking for open houses, talking to potential buyers, even if they're never going to work with you,
Mhm.
just talking to them and getting more comfortable talking about what you're doing, and talking about what you're trying to accomplish.
That is amazing advice. You've certainly done it the right way, for sure. All right. Does anybody have any questions for Journey before we wrap up? All right, nothing pressing. Journey, I thank you so much. And I say it all the time. I promise I'm going to have you host a social media class here soon too. But that you have been a wealth of information. We greatly appreciate it and hope to see you guys all tomorrow at our meeting in Brecksville.
Thank you so much, everybody.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Journey. Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.